Hey folks, welcome back to Gaming Garbage, where we take a look at games, chat about the gaming news in the industry, and of course, stream for fun. Today we're doing Gaming News Consolidated. This is November 17th through the 23rd. And we got quite a bit to talk about. And again, it's not as big. Thank goodness, man, we've had some pretty big weeks. But the whole idea with doing this is taking time, a few hours every week, looking at videos, looking at articles, and consolidating it all here in one podcast for you guys. While there's something on the screen for you guys to watch. So we'll be talking about scalpers. We'll be talking about some new stuff with Sony. We'll be talking about some closures of some studios. We'll be talking about some games coming to PC. Stalker 2, Ubisoft, of course, they just can never stay out of the news. Game of the Year nominations, man, we got a bunch. So thanks for tuning in, like and sub, all that jazz, and also share the content if you enjoy it too. You know better than me on who to actually get the content to. So if you share it, thanks a lot. I really appreciate that. But hey, let's go ahead and get started. So the scalpers are getting screwed on PlayStation 5 Pro. I just have to laugh with this because we know what the prices were. Okay, they were thousands of dollars. Even the 30th anniversary editions, they're just an insane prices. And the prices are definitely coming down quite a bit. And there's also taxes to consider too. And so scalpers right now are selling these, $900 to $1,500 on eBay, or at least they were. Sometimes you could see $2,000, even upwards of $2,000. But now you can go buy a Pro still directly from Sony for $700. It was like that through the entire pre-order period. You can do that now through the holidays. You can still go to their website directly and just go buy one. And then, too, we're also going to see these consoles in multiple different stores and retailers as well. So it'll probably be pretty easy to actually pick one up. And the scalpers, man, they're lowering their prices. They're even adding additions to sell, which is kind of crazy. So, like, I've seen an Edge controller, which is $200. I've seen various gift cards, free shipping, an extra controller on top of it. Just a regular base controller, all sorts of stuff. Because again, they're trying to now sell these and actually get whatever money they can out of them. Because the fact that the Pro has been available is just screwing them, and I'm honestly glad it is. Because these scalpers, again, they're not just raising it 20 or 30%. They're wanting to basically double the price, or even more, to just try to get as much money as they can. So today, most Pros are selling between $700 and $800. Super tight. And this is generally, too, with free shipping. Even express shipping, which, of course, normally costs quite a bit. If you're in the States, you can get it within, a day or two. Or if you're overseas, you can usually get it, within a week or something like that. But yeah, express shipping to be free, that's pretty crazy. And then, too, we're even seeing auctions right now on eBay that are somewhere between $650 and $700. So again, nobody is going to want to pay more than $700 plus shipping on top of it if they can just go get one from Sony for $700. So it's really wonderful to actually see these people getting screwed. And I don't blame anyone trying to make some extra money on the side or raising the price some a little bit. But there's an ethical dilemma there where you're purposefully screwing people and you're making it more premium than it used to be. But the whole reason we have these scalpers coming with PlayStation and stuff, and with the portals and the Edge controllers and PSVR 2 for a little bit, and whatever else they're going to be coming up with, is they're ultimately getting to the point where they saw it back in 2019 and 2020, where we had supply chain issues, we had the whole thing with COVID and all that, and so that was a real mess for 2-3 years to basically kind of get anything. And so you could raise the price. Well, that's not the case this time, and I'm so glad that Sony is actually working against that. It's great. But I'm even seeing the 30th anniversaries are dropping in price. They're not $5,000 anymore. There's some in the kind of mid to high 2000s. But most are generally somewhere between $3,000 and $4,000. And again, there's only 12,300 in some of these because of the actual release date in Japan in '94 in December. So there's only so many. They're all numbered and stuff. So those are truly exclusive and premium PlayStation 5 Pros. But yeah, for just a regular PlayStation 5 Pro or even just a regular Slim 30th Anniversary Edition, you can still go out and buy those. They're still being restocked. And yeah, they're just getting destroyed on this. So even too, if you're looking for a disk drive yourself, you can still find these in store. We got about 60,000 people living in my town. Pretty busy. We're kind of a hub in the middle of other cities. And I can still see disk drives pretty much just about every day or every week. So it's not like they're gone. Same with PS Portals if you want to get one, which there isn't updated news on that as well. But yeah, I see these disk drives on the shelves all the time. So go ahead and pick yourself one up. Don't pay these extra prices. Sony also has to address some allegations. Now, I want to say these are allegations because a lot of this is generally coming from one person that has been bringing this up. But Sony, I think, definitely has to address this because there is a trust issue. There is a Young Yeah video that covers it very well, and I will link that down below. But Hakum shares his story of finding out with receipts, basically, and a third-party person, telling him that his data is purposefully being leaked to phishers that are maliciously trying to use his data and or others. And this is not the first person. There's some other higher profile folks on PlayStation that basically trophy hunt, right? There's some of the top in the world. And Hakum has been the top in the world, having multiple Guinness World Records. And so, yeah, he's definitely made some money from this, from YouTube channels or social media or deals or whatever. And so, yeah, phishing someone that's got some money is definitely an easier way and a better way if you can get that, of course. But Hakum is saying with these receipts, again, link in the description down below, that, these people are, that there's employees at Sony with PlayStation that are actually leaking his data on purpose, probably for profit, for money. And so phishers probably aren't just doing this with just Sony. It probably does happen to a degree with just generally about everybody. And it's either, hey, pay for the information right illegally or try to hack it or something like that. But this is really pretty crazy because if the leaks are actually from Sony PlayStation support staff themselves, this really brings into question how many people that this actually affects. Because maybe if you can't get big fish, you'll maybe kind of go for the smaller fish and see if you can actually scam somebody. Also, too, Hakum was permanently banned with his PSN account because of illegal and phishing activity. And that's really what started this whole thing for him kind of investigating of exactly what was going on. But yeah, with his ban, Hakum said he didn't actually receive an email or a notice about the ban. Customer support also wouldn't explain right away why he was banned, which again was kind of weird. And yeah, just that there was some illegal activity or some activity that was suspicious or whatever. And all in all, Hakum has a concern, of course, for his data leak, but also for others, too, that have PSN. Even for people that are on PC, we know that Sony has mandated their PSN requirement to be able to play their games through Steam or through PC or whatever. And again, that is just more data that is out there. And it's this is a $100 billion company, basically. And to not be able to have trust with your private information, things like your address, any cards, debit or credit cards that you have on there, your full name, in some instances, maybe even your SSN, because again, this isn't just customers. This is actually employees, too, that actually work for Sony, apparently. And again, receipts to prove it. So this is really bad. This was really shocking, actually, to hear, because this is everybody that's currently got a PlayStation account. So it's always a good rule of thumb, folks, that, give the least amount of information that you can online, always, right? Or the least amount of information that's necessary to actually do what you need to do on a phone call or something like that. Because again, there are scammers out there. There are people that are trying stuff. And if you're never sure, just don't give any information and actually call the direct support line or whatever with the company, whoever it is, Sony or otherwise, and just make sure that you're actually not being scammed or whatever. Because yeah, these phishers, they're getting they're getting more devious and they're really trying to actually get that information. But yeah, this could lead to a severe mistrust with Sony and private data. This could also lead to civil and criminal lawsuits, even a class action lawsuit against Sony, if this is actually true and accurate, and if other people too, of course, affected. And yeah, this really looks bad for Sony actually right now. So again, link in the description below if you're curious. Young, yeah, does a good job of actually presenting all of that information. Let's talk about layoffs. Nobody really talks about layoffs anymore. It's just a normal thing, and so f all, right? Who really cares? But yeah, I'm still covering it here on the channel some. So let's talk about Thunderful Games. They're actually having another wave of layoffs this year, and actually less than a year than the last bit that they had. And yeah, they're citing they just have negative cash flow. Their stuff is not selling. And so, yeah, they're planning about another 80 to 100 employees to be laid off within the next several months. And yeah, that just sucks. Payload Studios, excuse me, that's another one. Very small studio, but, they're planning to have another 8 being laid off after they already laid off a previous 25% of their previous numbers for their staff. So they're going to lay off another 8, and they're just citing redundancies. Basically the bare minimum they can get by with, that's what they're doing. And that's actually what a lot of companies are doing. It's not just gaming, it's industry and it's services and retail. It's just, yeah, whatever is the bare minimum necessary to get the job done as a company for the number of employees that you have. And employees are generally always one of the most expensive aspects because, well, you constantly have to keep paying for an employee, and there's time off, and there's sick leave, and there's all sorts of stuff. It's actually quite expensive. Tencent is also figuring out how many right now to lay off at Shark Mob. Tencent is still allowing Exoborn, the game, to stay in development, which is good, but they are canceling an unknown game at the time that they've actually had in development for quite a while. So again, we are not going to know really what that game is, but Exoborn is still going to be allowed to go through. It's probably close enough. We did hear that there was going to be a beta at some point, or maybe there already has been. So they've got to be fairly close, right? They might as well just push on through and see what money they can make. But yeah, this sucks. Yeah, Shark Mob's going to have some layoffs. Again, we don't exactly know how many, but canceling an entire game that you've been working on for a while, that's a good chunk of the employees probably. Also, Tequila Works, they're also owned by Tencent. They've actually filed for insolvency. So again, just not enough money. They can't get a loan. They can't restructure stuff. They're just done. They're just done as a company. Tequila Works for quite a while was working on VR games recently, and again, VR just isn't panning out. PSVR 2 hasn't sold very well. It still hasn't sold very well. Neither has MetaQuest or anything like that. Sony and Meta have both kind of done everything they can to make their VR sell, but again, it's just not a mainstay. And when we're taking a look at actually all of the layoffs so far, now adding November for this year, we're looking at 13,200 layoffs in the gaming industry. That's almost 3,000 more than what we had in 2023. It all started with 2022 with QA people, and then we had these big layoffs in 23, and we had studio closures and canceled games. And now even with all of that, we're still having more. So, I mean, we had all of these put together, including the QA from 2022 and some of the smaller layoffs. We're probably looking roughly at like 25,000 people that have lost their jobs in the gaming industry. And that, man, that's huge. I should have looked up the number to see exactly how many total are in the job market right now. I didn't actually look that up. But yeah, 25,000 over basically the last 2 years is pretty insane. All right, let's talk about Ubisoft. They just cannot get out of their own way. I got to thank Lion for bringing this up, otherwise I never would have seen it. But yeah, this is kind of hilarious. Not for those that it affects, of course, but it's just unbelievable crap. So due to a bug in the Avatar game, Frontiers of Pandora, you can't actually use your save file unless you actually buy the DLC. It's like, what? Are you serious? So, of course, Ubisoft says that this is a mistake, that they're currently working on fixing it, but otherwise, you just have to wait. either buy the DLC to play your game and use your save file, or you just completely start over. And Ubisoft already had another game like that, which was Star Wars Outlaws for PlayStation 5. There was a progression bug. Ubisoft updated the game and then just said, oopsie, sorry. You just have to start the game completely all over again, which after, 6 to 10 hours, who wants to do that when they're just trying to flip and get through the story? So yeah, that's awful. I am curious, too, if there's actually some sabotage going on. Like, again, they have a lot of different employees. They have a lot of studios under their belt. Ubisoft does. But it's just like they keep hitting some of the craziest stuff with their game development and the launches of their games in most recent history, or delays, like big delays that they've had, which don't seem to really help any. And it's just kind of shocking what's going on. It's like they've had 2 games in a row now, Frontiers of Pandora and Star Wars Outlaws, that have both had save issues, whether you can't use the save or the save or the game has a bug that they patch and then you just lose your save anyway. And it's like, do you really want to buy a game from a company where not only are you not going to be able to finish the game or have a bug issue, but you also lose your save file? Like, who wants to do that? And like, I haven't heard any good news coming out of Ubisoft the last 2 or 3 years. It has just been going bad, and they also haven't had a single Game of the Year nomination in quite some time. And again, they didn't have one this year either. So yeah, they have some major issues, and they can't keep doing this forever. Eventually they have to get it right. Otherwise, yeah, they're not going to have a company. Let's talk about Stalker 2. Boy, it is a bit of a graphical mess, especially on PC. I also get to see it as well on Xbox. We have frame rate drops. We have texture pop in, sometimes pretty bad, like whole trees. Bloop. It looks pretty bad. There's also hovering NPCs, and sometimes they'll stay stationary until there's a trigger that's hit, and then they'll kind of sink back down to the ground. It's not like they're completely levitating up in the air or something. They're just off the ground a little bit. But also there's an NPC sitting in a chair, and he was constantly kind of shifting up and down jaggedly while you're looking at him. And again, the game is just trying to get him in his chair, but there's something off there, and so he's just shifting all over the place in his chair, and it looks kind of hilarious. I've also had the game freeze once, and I've also had 2 crashes so far with about 10 hours of gameplay. I think I'm at 11 hours of gameplay now. There's times, too, where the audio just goes quiet. Like, it just completely cuts off or stops all of a sudden. And it goes from being fairly loud and noticeable to just absolutely silent. And it sounds really weird. And sometimes, too, the audio just completely disappears. Like, I don't really hear anything for a little bit. I did have another time, too, where I was having massive frame rate drops. I was having shader problems. The shadows were all wonky. The entire brightness of the game completely shifted permanently. It wasn't like night and day cycle changes or the weather or anything like that. Just something was really off, and I actually had to shut my game off and restart it. So yeah, there are definitely some issues. I'm still giving this overall a 7 out of 10 with roughly the 11 hours that I've played, and it's because of what the devs went through with the Ukraine war. Like, that is a massive thing that they've had to deal with. They've had to move their studio. They've actually had some devs serve. They've also lost some devs. Some of them have died. So, yeah, for them to put out this game just at all at this point is kind of amazing. Again, they are dedicated to fixing these bugs, and they are working on fixing these bugs as quickly as they can. But I'm willing to give them some grace because of what they've been through. And this is a massive installment for Stalker, for their IP that they have. And I'm new to the IP personally, so there's probably a little bit of bias there. It's exactly the type of survival FPS game I've wanted in a long time. It is that good, folks. It's actually what I was hoping for with Starfield that I didn't get. And it's very reminiscent of like Fallout or Oblivion. It's just a fun way to run through. The side quests feel all handcrafted. There's nothing that feels like procedurally generated in the game. Whether it is or not, I don't know. But like, and all of the little things too that they've added. I'll be sure to have a total kind of like review of my own thoughts after roughly 15, 20 hours of gameplay, and I'll put it all together for you. And I still have my initial look to put out, and that'll be coming out relatively soon. But yeah, so the game does such a good job with atmosphere and lighting, and your choices have an effect in the game and stuff. They and the gunplay is good. It's more of a sim than an arcade shooter. So yeah, Call of Duty folks are going to have a really tough time with this game. But you can also change a lot of the settings to kind of dictate how hard or how easy kind of you want the game. I think regardless, it will still be difficult. But yeah, so far the game has been extremely fun. And it shows because they've already sold 1 million copies in 48 hours. And then this does not include all of the people on Game Pass. So the company's also been paid by Microsoft to have the game on Game Pass with some contractual agreement, probably roughly 12 months or something. And then as people continue to play on Game Pass, that game will continue to stay and they will continue to be paid. So there's some really good motivation here to actually fix the game quickly. We also know there's some later DLC with some extra narrative and side quests and stuff or whatever. And so, yeah, that will be coming. But yeah, so far the game has made over $70 million, plus whatever the contract is with Microsoft. And all of their physical copies basically sell out immediately. They already had one batch that they had. Those sold out incredibly quick. So they got a whole second batch going, and all of those sold out as well. I myself was not even able to get a copy. And it sucks because I was really hoping to be able to do that. But oh well, I'm going to have to see if I can get a physical copy later. Maybe with it being buggy enough, maybe some people will get rid of theirs and I'll be able to find it. Who knows? We'll have to see. But yeah, so far, just my personal opinion, it's been the survival FPS I've wanted for quite a few years, and I'm going to be playing it a lot. It's a blast. There's just something new around every single corner, blade of grass, every cave. I mean, it's so cool. I love the alternative history. Next, let's talk about Stellar Blade. It's actually going to be coming to PC, according to the developers, in 2025. This was actually one of the games that's actually been nominated for Game of the Year. It's really hard to say exactly what PlayStation has for true exclusives anymore. And so we know that Spider-Man 2, Helldivers, Stellar Blade, Lego Horizon, Horizon Remake, Judas, which isn't even out yet, God of War Ragnarok, Silent Hill 2 Remake, Until Dawn Remake, Forspoken, which is coming to Xbox in 2025, Last of Us Part 2, Phantom Blade Zero, Foam Stars, Black Myth Wukong, Death Stranding. All of these are games that have been on other platforms other than PlayStation. Really racking my brain, I could only think of 4 games that actually have stayed on PlayStation. Link more down below, or comment down below if you can think of any others. But Gran Turismo 7, Rise of Ronin, and Astrobot and Concord. Those are the only ones I can think of. And honestly, I want the console war to be over. I want this exclusivity to be over because it's very beneficial to get on many platforms as you can. Square Enix, along with some others, have already said, yeah, I mean, we want to get as many out there as we can. We have Death Stranding now on Xbox. It's very likely according to Kojima, that we're also going to get Death Stranding 2, probably a timed exclusive, but also on Xbox 2 at some point. And then the best people, the ones eating the best, are all on PC. I mean, if you want to get basically everything at this point, grab a PC, and within 12 months ish of release date, you will be getting it. Even Spider-Man 2 is going to be going after, I think, 13 or 14 months after release date, which is really quick. Usually it was like 2 or 3 years, but yeah, that's just, again, not the case anymore. And it's lucrative to get on as many platforms as you can. So regardless of what Sony is doing, they're basically just wanting to exclude Xbox, but they're including Nintendo, they're including PC, and then even some of these games are still even coming over to Xbox. So however people want to frame it or say it online, the console war is basically over. I think Sony's going to keep it going basically as long as it can to get as many console sales as it can, but we are completely moved past that now, as you'll hear later in the news. Let's talk about Lego Horizon Adventures. It just seems like it's a game that people didn't ask for. It runs great. It's like a solid 60 frames per second. People are really enjoying it, but people just aren't playing it. PlayStation Time Tracker is not even in the top 100 in the last 7 days since its release. It's been released for 8 days now, and there's actually 0 players playing it right now on PlayStation Time Tracker. Take a look at Steam Charts DB. It has a 59%, which is not great. It peaked at 602, and there's only 99 currently playing as the time that I actually wrote this news down. So again, it was really not looking great. If they actually wanted some more sales, people will probably get it for the Lego collection. And, from what I've heard and seen, some people actually really, again, enjoy the game. But it kind of reminds me of Astrobot, where it's like, wow, you only sold 1.5 million copies, and you have 65 million PlayStation 5 consoles out there. That's kind of weird. And then, too, Lego is also on PC, and really nobody's buying it. So, yeah, that doesn't bode very well. I don't think the sales are going to be great. The holidays will help, but after that, we're probably really not going to see too much. Also, Horizon Zero Dawn Remaster across Metacritic and Steam, it's in the 60s. So again, it's not as high as we would be hoping. It is still a $10 upgrade if you still have the original game, of course. Otherwise, you got to buy it for $50. And there's actually no info on the remaster right now on PlayStation Time Tracker. I took time to look at it, but since it's a $10 upgrade, I wonder if it's just seen as a DLC, maybe, to the game, and that's why I can't find it. So that's kind of interesting. Let's talk about Splinter Cell. We do know that Pandora tomorrow basically has its license revoked, so you can't actually buy it on the digital storefronts anymore, which is really frustrating. But if you have a physical copy, you can shove it in there and yeehaw, baby, you can get it. But Splinter Cell was also going to be getting a movie, and now that's actually currently canceled. So the script, the art direction, the budget, just nothing was going right, and they have tried and tried to get this off the ground, to get momentum behind this project, and that just isn't happening. So it's over. It's been officially canceled now. James Hardy was going to be actually the main character, which I think could have been really interesting. It also would have helped him get away from Venom now that that's over. He's done 3 movies now. But yeah, unfortunately, just could not get it off the ground. So that's one adaptation that I won't be able to see, unfortunately. Let's talk about NetEase. They've been found of wrongdoing in millions and scamming roughly 30 companies. Again, we don't know exactly what they did wrong or how they scammed. They did say that it wasn't money laundering, but again, they won't really say anything else. We don't have any current details at the time. But we're looking at, after converting to US dollars, we're looking at roughly a confirmed $139 million that has been scammed out of roughly 30 companies, and that is massive. There could be a class action lawsuit with this. Of course, this will also be criminal. So we'll see what happens. I mean, there'll be more details that'll be coming out later. But yeah, that is incredible. Like, what are they doing? And NetEase is like a huge company for mobile, so I'm guessing it's got something to do with that, of course, because they make a lot of mobile games. And usually they're pretty good, but I mean, when you're scamming $139 million, there's something really wrong there. So any other news that I find, I'll bring you guys up to date. Let's talk about something with Black Ops 6. So Season 1 got an update, and players were seeing a whole bunch of boosters all of a sudden, and suddenly they all disappeared again. And Activision put out a statement saying that they were legacy tokens from past Call of Duty games, like Modern Warfare 2 or Modern Warfare 3. And, of course, this honestly upset players because it's like, hey, it's getting pretty rough to grind, or there's a lot of weapons to grind. We're also going to get new weapons and stuff to grind with every single season. It is nice you can always regrind those or go back and grind for those if you want with the armory. But again, it's a lot of time and effort. So any boosters you can have is going to be helpful, of course, right? And some of these aren't huge. They're like 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour, something like that. But to have some old legacy tokens that are like, 2 to 4 hours or something would be like a really huge deal. And Activision has said that they're looking to fix this, and put it in correctly, quote unquote. But we don't really have an idea of when. And of course, they want to find a way to make this beneficial to players, where they can get something, of course, but also make it beneficial to the company. Because of course, the company wants you to pay for the boosters as a microtransaction so that you can work through those level faster for your gun or for your prestige or whatever. So. But yeah, just to yank it like that, and for people to have to complain, for them to be like, "Hey, yeah, we did take it." That's just trashy. I wish these AAA companies would stop doing crap like this, because if an indie developer did it, that would be over, right? There'd be no more of that. Moving on, Xbox is now launching officially xCloud. There's been it's actually an xCloud upgrade for currently just Game Pass Ultimate users, but eventually this will be coming to all current Xbox consoles next year. I'm assuming that this is actually going to be just like current gen, like Series S and X. But right now there's 50 games that are available to be streamed technically without Game Pass. So just the beta is being with Game Pass Ultimate users. But yeah, the whole idea is to actually, whatever game you buy on the Xbox Store digitally, or you have physically even, you'll be able to stream it directly through your console or through your phone or laptop, tablet, whatever, even your Samsung TV, whatever device you have, you'll be able to stream the games that you technically own. And I think that is, man, that's really actually pretty cool. Because again, maybe you have a ROG Ally or a Steam Deck, and again, these Game Pass is also available on this. So, yeah, this is pretty big, and ultimately the whole idea is to have the entire Xbox store that's streamable. I mean, this is tens of thousands of games, plus all of the games that are coming in the future. And so, of course, we're still likely to see some hard drive space available, right, for the games that you want to play. But again, if you want to be able to stream them on the go or wherever you're at, now you can stream these AAA games and not have to worry about actually having a console. And I think that's a pretty big deal for different parts of the market. Maybe for first world countries, not so much, because we love our consoles. That's what we grew up with. But for other people that are on the go or don't even have access or the resources to actually buy a current gen console, now they don't necessarily have to worry about that as much. And for it to just be, Game Pass is one thing, but now the entire library, man, that is wild. That truly is wild. Well, let's talk about Sony. So they're actually looking at acquiring Kadokawa. Did I say that correctly? I'm not sure if I did. Kadokawa is currently the parent of From Software, and Sony has initiated talks to buy the parent company. And basically, if the deal goes through, Sony would get more animes under its belt to have more of a monopoly, and then also the From Software studio. And I personally am just not excited about this because I haven't enjoyed what Sony's been doing for the last while, unfortunately. And yeah, it's just incredibly frustrating that if Sony actually got them, that I honestly wouldn't trust From Software like I do today. I'd still trust them to a degree, but I would want to see what they put out because now they have different masters. And we all seen how Sony has boogered and botched a lot of their games. And yeah, that is just incredibly frustrating. Let's talk about Dragon Quest III. It's selling really well. So we get some Japan numbers. They get to see weekly sales of what sells. And Dragon Quest III Remake is actually at the top. They basically sold 820,000 copies. And they actually ran out of physical copies to sell over there. So, yeah, they could have made some more money selling physical. Just like Stalker 2. It's flipping wild. But yeah, Dragon Quest III is doing exceptionally well. Let's talk about the Game Awards. Game of the Year nominations. We have Astrobot, Metaphor ReFantazio, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Black Myth Wukong, Balastro, and Shadow of the Erdtree. There was an update, which is interesting for basically to include Shadow of the Erdtree. It was pretty easy to tell that, actually, unfortunately. But yeah, it is just kind of weird, because it's a DLC. It's not actually a game, and I gotta agree with this sentiment, because again, a DLC should be in its own category, and I think remakes and remasters, especially remasters, should also be in their own category too, or maybe just linked with DLCs. But it's just kind of weird that out of all of the games that we had this year, again for 12 months, we're looking at putting in a DLC. I don't think that's ever happened before. It's just kind of weird. And again, I don't think either we should include DLCs. But yeah, something's going on there behind the scenes. So yeah, we'll have to see who actually wins. If it is Shadow of the Erdtree, I think that would be flipping wild for the Game of the Year to be Shadow of the Erdtree. I think that would be kind of nuts. Some people have speculated too that maybe it has to do with Sony trying to buy basically From Software, and so that's why this is actually included. Because From Software, of course, didn't put out a game today or this year, but they put out a DLC. So we're not entirely sure what's going on, but yeah, I don't agree with this. I really think it should have been maybe Helldivers or Space Marine 2. Some people are saying Pal World, but I don't agree with that either, because it's still an early access. And honestly, for Game of the Year, it needs to be a full release. Otherwise, we could have nominated Baldur's Gate 3 for 3 years in a row for Game of the Year, and that just doesn't feel right. So, but yeah, Game of the Awards, we're going to cover that. We're going to cover that here on the channel, and I'll let you know how horrible it is, so that you guys don't have to watch it every flipping year. All right, we're almost done here. I think I'm almost done with my video too. I probably better restart this, but we'll see. PlayStation Portal. This is actually pretty interesting. Thanks to an update, is now actually able to stream games without the PlayStation 5. And this is really fascinating, because currently you've always needed the PlayStation to actually be on to, or even just an standby mode to actually put your games to your Portal. But now the Portal is, I guess, a standalone device. This is currently in beta, so they can work out some of the bugs. And it's only available through the PlayStation Plus Premium members, which there's roughly about 6 million of those, maybe a little more like 7 million now at this point, but it's their smallest consumer base. And this is very much kind of like the xCloud idea. So again, both of these are working away from the console, and they're working more towards services to try to compete and to do all that good jazz. Let me just start this over here. And yeah, I think it's very, very interesting. There's currently 120 games to choose from, and you'll be streaming to your Portal at 1080p at 60 frames. This is stable 60 frames, supposedly. There will be some videos coming out pretty quickly, I think, to see what people think about it, what the issues are, what they like about it, all that jazz. And yeah, apparently, too, this also isn't going to include any type of service package, But again, we'll have to see. It's kind of like to see what Microsoft is going to do with xCloud, being able to just stream a whole bunch of games. Maybe you don't want Game Pass, but you want to be able to stream, and so maybe there'll be likely just a cloud subscription, and maybe Sony will actually do the same thing. It would make sense. It costs money to actually run these games, because they still run on local hardware, on Microsoft's and Sony's property, and then they just stream it to you. That's the idea. So it's not like you're running on a different piece of hardware, or like one hardware is running for a whole bunch of other people. Maybe you could have some virtual machines copying. But yeah, I'm not entirely sure how it works, but like you do have to actually run the hardware, and then they're sending it to you remotely. For you to actually play your game, basically. They're giving you the connection to the local hardware on their end. And you don't need the hardware to actually run it, which is actually kind of cool. I think that's a really neat idea for a lot of folks. But yeah, again, we don't have a ton of data on this. We don't exactly know how it's running. From what I have seen, it does actually look pretty good. And again, I think, well, now PlayStation ultimately has a handheld, which I think that's very, very curious. All they needed to do was just basically update the thing, and voila, there you go, baby. We do know that Xbox does have a handheld, of course, themselves that they're working on prototypes, quote unquote, but they're not completely greenlit yet. The expectation is that this handheld is going to release in the future, but we currently don't have any other information besides that. So, yeah, we'll have to see. I guess I should mention too the red line. Phil Spencer made it pretty clear that basically there is no more red line anymore for exclusives. That ultimately everything, maybe to some degree, at some point, is available to go over to PlayStation or, of course, other platforms, but basically everything's going to PC anyway. We even got some stuff on Xbox and Sony's side going over to Nintendo. So I don't really understand why people are still like maybe freaking out over this a little bit or whatever. It's like, look, people should be able to play what they want to play on and just leave it at that. Let's actually make the games good again instead of using the exclusivity wheel as a crutch. I'm sure we'll still have some, there'll be timed exclusives or something like that. But like it's really getting frustrating because the consoles are limited in what they're going to be able to do local hardware wise because again otherwise it's going to cost too much. We're already seeing that with the PlayStation 5 Pro. So in order for it to be affordable, we need to have another option that can include more people. Because again, once you start narrowing that consumer base, well, ultimately you're just going to make less money. And that's where we're seeing all of these publishers and other companies just being like, yeah, as many platforms as we can, shove it out there to as many possible buyers as we can. And guess what? You get more sales. You get more revenue through the door. And that's what everybody's looking for. So again, this is just Sony following suit, trying to expand and compete because again, we're moving away from console and we're pushing more towards services now on what can actually be sold. And I think that's ultimately better for the consumer. I still believe, and Microsoft has already said this with Phil Spencer, that yes, there still will be a next-gen console. They're still going to have that. I think as long as Xbox is doing it, Sony will continue to follow suit with that. And Nintendo is, of course, doing their own thing. And then PCs, of course, aren't going anywhere. But I think with all of these changes, I think the biggest band that we're going to see expand is going to be PC. I already have some other friends last year and this year that are like, yep, I'm just kind of done with the whole mess. There's really not a lot of benefit. It's still a lot of money. And I can get rid of a lot of these things that I hate or are frustrated with these console companies. And I can just have a better experience on PC. And I can basically get every single exclusive. Maybe I have to wait for some of them, but, oh well. I get a ton of others and I get it at a cheaper price point. And I don't have to buy a new console every time, and I can make it the PC as expensive or as cheap as I want, which is kind of nice. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see, I think, the rest of this decade and the launch of the next gen to really see what happens between Xbox and PlayStation. But right now, the player bases, people are appreciating what Xbox is doing, generally speaking, with Game Pass, with cloud streaming, with trying to stream and cloud the entire store, and still even with like Starfield allowing, physical copies to actually be sold. So they haven't fired their entire division of physical copy manufacturers or whatever. There's still part of them there, but a lot of them were fired, I think, last year, maybe this year. But yeah, I still think they're going to make physical copies. But again, 90 plus whatever percent of games sold today are all digital. So I totally understand that companies are getting away from that because, again, it's more expensive for them and they don't always sell well, especially if you make something like Concord or Suicide Squad or Skull and Bones. Again, it's just not going to be a game that actually sells well, and we've already seen that this year. All right, let's get on to the last piece. And this actually, too, is actually really interesting. Steam is really starting to hold companies accountable. So we've all been screwed in some way, generally speaking, with DLCs and stuff. I remember DLC for Tiny Tina's Wonderland for the Borderland franchise, and boy, that did not feel like DLC whatsoever. It felt like a slap in the face. But yeah, there's been other issues too with like Overwatch or Tekken or a lot of these other games. There's just a lot of issues there. Even with Destiny, um, there's been some problems. So Steam is now changing some policies and adding new requirements for publishers for actual DLCs. And so this does not include microtransactions. This does not include like battle passes. Okay, this actually includes like the season pass of multiple DLC expansions to the story or to modes or whatever. And yeah, this is actually pretty interesting. So here's the four main things that they're changing. Things need to be clearly defined on what the digital content is, not just for what's releasing, but for the entire bundle that you're buying. Description needs to be specifically said of, again, what's in it. And there needs to be a specific date for release for that DLC. And you can be as specific as a particular month and year, or at least like the quarter that it's supposed to release. Also, the content must be available. At least the first piece of DLC needs to be available when you purchase the bundle, like the season pass. So, like if there's 4 DLCs that are in a bundle, when you're buying it, the first one actually needs to be available content that you can play right away. And I think that's great, because then otherwise you're just buying a promise, and that doesn't always work out very well, unfortunately. Number 4, any DLC that's canceled, Valve will mandate a refund from the publisher. And so that really starts to cost the publisher money, actually. And that becomes a problem. And we already have some games, actually, that fail these new rules. And so Tekken 8 would be an example. Stalker 2 would be another one. It's just not descriptive enough. Redfall would be a third one. Again, they basically ended development of that game and promised DLC. Well, we didn't get it all. That's unfortunate. Assassin's Creed Unity, even though it was 10 years ago, again, that game had so many issues coming out, so many problems that they were trying to fix. Again, they just had issues with their DLC trying to get out there. Skylines 2, Waterfront would be another one. They actually missed their release date, and we just don't have any other information still. And so, yeah, again, those are 5 games that actually wouldn't meet these requirements. And it's really interesting because the publisher does have a grace period, of course. Steam themselves is a developer, so they understand that some things can go wrong and that there can be delays. But there's a 3-month grace period for the delay. If it actually goes past that, then Valve basically gets to make a determination on what happens. And, you know, again, it's like you can say, okay, this is supposed to release Q1. Okay, it releases. Great. This is supposed to release Q2. Good. Q3, well, we've delayed it for 3 months because you can only delay it a max of 3 months. Okay. Well, now we're into month 4 and 5. And Valve can be like, look, we are mandating refunds. And if that ends up being the case, there's some options here. The entire season pass can actually be removed for sale, which that's pretty big because now you're losing sales, right? Also, all unreleased content may be refunded, or the customer might also have the option to refund the entire season pass, which is crazy because let's say you got this content, you've paid for it, you've been playing it, you've been using it, and then Valve, some hiccup happens that's too big of a hiccup, and Valve allows you to refund the entire season pass. Well, then you got content for free. And not only does, the publisher lose out on that money, they also have to still continue to pay for the fees that are associated with Valve. So it's kind of like they're losing money on 2 fronts in some cases. And yeah, that is truly interesting. And I think this is great. I think ultimately it's wonderful that Valve is actually starting to hold some accountability on Steam. And the reason Valve is doing this is because there's been a lot of examples lately ever since COVID where things haven't really gone very smoothly for DLC. Again, you kind of have like a train. right? You have the engine, which is the game, and then you have all of these cars that are DLC, and they're all linked together. And it's got to smoothly move on by. But if there's a hiccup, well, it stops the rest of the cars that are ahead of that hiccup, and they can't actually get there. We actually got to see this with Halo Infinite. That wouldn't have passed either. Because again, we were supposed to get Season 2, and it took 10 months to get Season 2. That was ridiculous. It had a good launch in the beginning. Multiplayer was great. They actually released it early, which they got big buco, 5 stars for that. But then it's like the rest of the DLC and the content we were supposed to be getting just wasn't happening, unfortunately. Now that was a battle pass type of thing. But again, I'm sure Valve would have done something there because again, it's like, look, you're having people pay for this content. You're promising this content and you're not providing it. And Valve is just done playing that game. That's why there's laying out these rules, because if their own platform by third-party behavior gets damaged, well, then they're going to lose out on sales too. Because they make a lot of money off of allowing games to be sold on their platform. They make a percentage of every single game sale, basically. And they got to ensure and protect the integrity of their own platform. Otherwise, they themselves aren't going to be making as much money. So I think this is good. This is accountability. This is going to help Steam in the future. This is also going to help customers in the future. And customers are going to be backed with a guarantee by Valve that the content has to be what was promised and that it has to come out within a reasonable amount of time. Otherwise, we're kind of getting scammed here. And I'm actually quite thankful for that. So these rules technically will be going into effect, I believe, next year. And again, there's still that extra 3-month grace period to actually get DLC out. But if we thought crunch time was bad for some of these live service games, oh boy, just wait until you might be having some deeper repercussions on Steam if you can't actually get it out in an extra 3 months. That's going to cost the publishers money too. And I think stuff like this actually needs to happen so we can have better games, better content, fairness of what's actually promised and what we actually pay for, and to actually provide value and just some kind of guideline, not even guidelines, but just kind of some bumpers to make sure that these publishers stay in their lane and actually just don't screw us over, because that's definitely happened with just about every single AAA publisher this decade in just the last 5 years since 2020. So again, they've had some grace, but hey, it's time to buckle up and actually provide what they're saying they're going to provide, because otherwise I just don't even see how that can really be legal. So, well, thanks for tuning in, folks. You can always find me over at Gaming Garbage 22 over at YouTube. There's also Discord, Twitter X, and also Twitch. Twitch, you can see everything there first if you'd like to follow. And you don't have to wait for it to come out. Just when I stream it, it's there. You can watch it right away. On YouTube, it's a little bit more refined. It's a little bit more edited. There's a thumbnail or whatever, or maybe some tweaked audio and stuff, but it's nothing super fancy. I mean, for those of you that have been on the channel here for a while, you already know it's like, this is just how it is. And is really to provide you guys information. And I love doing it. I mean, we're already at 400 subscribers. My goal for this year was 250. And so, yeah, we're way past that now compared to what I was hoping for. And I just got to say thanks. I mean, this has just been fun to interact and comment and to hear people's feedback too for the channel and the critiques and stuff. And yeah, it's just been fun. Even making some friends with y'all and playing with you guys online and stuff. It's been a blast, and it's just been a privilege to just interact with you guys. So anyway, hopefully you guys are doing well. Hopefully the winter is not going to be horrible this year. I know I'm sweating it a little bit where I'm living, but yeah, we'll have to see. And with that, folks, we'll see you guys on the next one.